The moon wasn't dead, not really. It just breathed slower than the others. Orion called it Solon's shell. No official maps used that name, just cartographers' numbers and classifications. Sector 7C, 44, lunar orbit 3.23. Meaningless to anyone who didn't hear the quiet song under the stone. To Orion, this hollow moon had been home for 9 years. His life before it felt like a dream he didn't want to revisit. He had once been known, too well, too loud. A voice that sold out arenas across 5 systems. Orion Tyr, the voice of the Sapphire Sun. The man who made even hardened veterans weep with just a few notes. But now, he lived in silence. Not complete silence, the kind where you feel like something's missing, but chosen quiet. Gentle. Sacred. The hum of old equipment. The creak of dust-laced walls. The occasional groan of shifting rock beneath the dome. That morning, like every morning, he rose early. Brewed tea from bitter leaf roots he harvested himself. Wrapped a scarf around his throat, not for cold, but for memory. He walked the perimeter, checked the sensors, not that they mattered anymore, and returned to the main chamber. He didn't sing. Not anymore. He hummed, now and then. Softly, like brushing dust off an old love letter. The change came quietly. Not like a crash, not like a storm. More like an absence. The wind didn't tap against the observatory walls that day. The shadows outside didn't shift with their usual slow rhythm. And from deep within the storage archive, a receiver lit up. Orion stared at it for a long time before moving. He hadn't heard that tone in over a decade. A faint green light blinked 3 times. Then a voice, small and worn, slipped into the air. Hello. I'm not sure this still works. The voice wasn't human. Not entirely. Soft consonants lilted like falling water. Vowels bent at odd angles, half-sung. I was told this moon held a song, the voice continued. Not just any song. Yours. He didn't answer. Not at first. He couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to him, not about him. The voice hesitated. Please. I don't want to hear it. I want to feel it. The receiver clicked off. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence. She arrived 3 hours later. A small pod landed in a canyon just beyond the observatory ridge. No warning. No ID code. The sensors barely registered her descent. He stood by the east window and watched the dust rise from her landing. A figure stepped out, tall, lean, cloaked in dark fabric stitched with silver thread. She walked slowly, like someone who knew how to listen to the ground. He didn't greet her. Not immediately. She didn't knock. Just entered. The air shimmered around her as she stepped inside. A scent followed her, burnt pollen and something older, deeper, like distant storms. He saw her eyes then. Clouded. Pale. Sightless. But her steps never faltered. You are Orion, she said. You don't know that. She tilted her head. I do. He studied her. The way her fingers moved lightly across the wall. The way her body turned slightly with every sound. How? He asked. Your silence sings, she replied. Her name was Kayla. She didn't say where she came from. Orion didn't ask. She claimed no titles. No heritage. Said only that she followed old songs. Echoes. Said they led her here. She stayed in a corner of the observatory, uninvited but not unwelcome. She helped tend the hydropots. Repaired an old atmospheric vent without needing tools. She moved like someone who belonged. Orion avoided her at first. Not coldly, just carefully. But slowly, her presence carved space in his day. He began leaving extra tea in the kettle. She began humming when she thought he couldn't hear. They never discussed music. Never mentioned the voice he used to carry across worlds. Until one night. "This moon is hollow," she said, lying on the floor, palms flat against the stone. "But it isn't empty." Orion looked over from his workbench. "What do you hear?" She smiled faintly. "The remnants. Echoes that don't want to die." He walked over, sat beside her. "You came here to listen?" he asked. "No." She turned her face toward him. "I came here to be heard." He said nothing. "They called me broken," she said. "Too sensitive. Too quiet. But your songs, they reached places no other voices touched. My people listened. I listened." She touched her chest. "I remembered." He hesitated. "And now? Now, I want to remember with you." The first time he touched her hand, it wasn't planned. They were cataloging old radio fragments in the archive. She reached for a shard of crystal at the same time he did. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them moved away. "Your hands are cold," she whispered. "I haven't used them for warmth in a long time." She nodded. "Then let them rest in mine." They didn't fall in love suddenly. No stars exploding. No declarations. It came like a tide. First the pull. Then the current. Then the surrender. He began humming again, longer now. Not just for himself. She began dancing, slow spirals in the observatory's main chamber, guided by nothing but his breath. Some nights, they sat in silence for hours. And that silence, shared, became the most intimate thing of all. Then came the morning when she placed a small sphere on the table. "This holds your song," she said. He frowned. "I haven't recorded anything in years." "Not yours alone," she said. "Ours." She pressed the sphere. A sound poured out, not words. Not melody. But emotion. Hope. Ache. Softness. Longing. He felt his knees weaken. "We made this together," she said, without knowing it. She stepped closer. Touched his chest. "Your voice found me. Not the notes. The silence between them." He closed his eyes. And when he opened them, he kissed her. Not wildly. Not hungrily. Like he'd been waiting decades. To come home. Outside, the moon groaned again. But this time, Orion didn't hear it alone. And in that sacred quiet, two broken voices became one. The desert stretched beyond the horizon, as though time itself had dried and cracked beneath a violet sun. Sela adjusted the folds of her cloak, shielding her face from the hot wind. The sand here wasn't gold, it shimmered like old glass, fragments of memory fused into ground. Each step felt like walking across someone's forgotten story. This was Taraxis, one of the memory planets. Not a tourist world. Not a battlefield. Not anymore. Here, memories were currency. People came to forget. Others came to erase. And Sela? She helped them disappear. Her job was simple: extract the fragments of identity, rewrite the scars of the mind, plant new memories like seeds. She worked in a structure carved into the side of a red cliff, a quiet sanctuary with no doors, just light-activated passageways. Most who found her did so by rumor. Those who left never remembered her name. And that, Sela told herself, was the point. Until he came. His name on the registry was Thier Ken, though she doubted it was real. He arrived just before dusk, a thin line of shadow wrapped in a gray coat, his eyes hidden behind dust shield goggles. But even before he spoke, she felt something wrong. Not in a threatening way. In a familiar way. "I'm told you help people start over," he said. His voice was rough, like sandpaper over silk. There was a rasp at the end of each word, as though he fought the urge to speak more softly than he should. She nodded once. Why do you want to forget? He hesitated. Then he said, because remembering hurts. She led him into the core room, cool, dim, quiet. The walls were made of memory thread stone, designed to capture neurological echoes. Saturday she activated the scanner. Then he removed his goggles. Her heart stopped. His eyes. Dark gold, flecked with green. And the scar, small, curved like a falling star, under his left eye. A scar she had kissed. A man she had once held. But it couldn't be. He had been erased. She had erased him. You all right? He asked. She blinked. Fine. She adjusted the scanner, her hands trembling. He looked around the room. It feels like, I've been here before. Her voice was even. You haven't. He smiled faintly. You sure? Very. But she wasn't. Not anymore. 10 years ago, on a moon called Kereth, she had loved a man who named stars for her. He wasn't perfect. He was wild, reckless, a former courier who smuggled forbidden poems through empire-guarded trade routes. But he listened when she spoke. And when he laughed, she remembered why silence could be lonely. They had planned to run. To leave everything behind. Then the purge began. The Empire began tracking memory signatures of all fugitives. To survive, Thier gave himself up, to be erased. She had watched as his memories faded, layer by layer, and she had been the one to turn the machine on. He never looked at her again. But now he was here. And something, inside him remembered. You don't talk much, he said after the third session. I'm not here to talk. That's not true, he said. You're here to listen. Sela met his gaze. Listening isn't talking. Maybe. But your silence has weight. Like it's not empty. Like it's, holding something. She turned away. He stood. What if I don't want to forget anymore? She froze. You said it hurts, she replied. It still does. But so does not knowing why. She inhaled slowly. Then don't ask. But he did. At night, he stood outside, staring at the twin moons above the desert. Sela watched him through the curtain, her hands pressed to the wall. She whispered his name to herself, like a song she wasn't allowed to sing anymore. Thier. The one she had erased. The one who was now finding his way back. One night, she stepped beside him. He didn't look at her. I see flashes, he said. Of what? Laughter. Red silk. Someone saying my name like it mattered. Her throat tightened. He turned to her. Was it you? The wind howled across the sand. Sela said nothing. But her silence cracked. A tear slipped down her cheek. And Thier, gently, reached up to wipe it away. Why do I know you? He whispered. Because once, she breathed, you loved me. They didn't sleep that night. They sat in the archive room, surrounded by fragments of other people's memories. Thier's hands never left hers. Tell me, he said. And she did. She told him everything. How they met. How they ran. How she loved him. How she let him go. His head dropped against her shoulder. You had to, he said quietly. I didn't want to. They sat like that for hours. And as the sun rose, he kissed her for the second time in his life. The first time he didn't remember. This time, he would never forget. But memory isn't a safe thing on Taraxis. They had broken the law by remembering. And the machines knew. By dusk, the sky shimmered with blue fire, signal drones scanning for non-sterile mines. We have to go, Sela said. They'll erase me again, Thea replied. Not if we leave the system. We? She hesitated. Then nodded. I won't forget you a second time. They fled under the second moon. Riding an old glider across the glass dunes, hearts pounding in time with the wind. Sela never looked back. Thea never let go of her hand. They didn't know what waited beyond the desert. But it didn't matter. Because in the space between stars, there was a memory waiting to be made. And this time, they would keep it. Together. The garden shimmered in shades no human eye could name. Soft tendrils of starlace curled around crystalline stems, each one humming in resonance with the gravitational waves of the collapsing star outside. It wasn't a garden in the traditional sense. It was grown inside the shell of a neutron star, wrapped in engineered membranes and light field barriers, a living sanctuary where nothing should survive. And yet it thrived. Because Enrique had made it so. He wasn't human. Not quite. He had been born flesh, yes, on a mining outpost orbiting a cold planet with no songs, but when his body failed after an accident, the technicians gave him a choice. Fade. Or be rewritten. He chose survival. His mind now lived inside a synthetic body, slender, precise, elegant. His skin shimmered like moonglass, and his voice carried no breath. But his soul, if such things persisted, was full of warmth. And longing. He tended the garden alone. Not out of necessity, he had built companions before, soft drones and echo-foxes made of dust, but because the garden was meant to be silent. It was his cathedral, his penance. Each plant grown from a single lost memory. Each bloom a regret carefully sculpted into something beautiful. And each time the star outside shifted, its pulse deepening as it edged closer to collapse, Enrique felt it inside his chest. Like an old heartbeat trying to wake up. He didn't expect visitors. Not here. Not this deep in time. But one arrived anyway. She descended in a vessel of living metal, shaped like a sphere of water frozen mid-breath. Her ship moved not by thrusters, but by resonance, singing to space until space moved around it. Her name was Luma. She stepped into his garden barefoot, her skin a soft shade of blue lavender, her eyes silver with no whites. Her hair moved like mist, floating even when she stood still. Enrique turned when she entered. He did not smile. He hadn't in years. This place is collapsing, she said. So am I, he replied. She tilted her head. May I walk your sorrow? He hesitated. Then nodded. They spent hours in silence. Luma walked through the gardens, touching petals with care. She did not ask questions. She did not speak her name. But Enrique knew her. Not from this life. Not from this world. From the echo of a dream that had never fully faded. He watched her fingers trace the edge of a bloom shaped like a weeping flame. That one is grief, he said. She nodded. I feel it. He stepped closer. How? She turned to him, eyes luminous. Because I planted something like it once, in the core of a comet that never stopped crying. They talked after that. Not often. Not in long sentences. But enough. He learned she was a star maker, one of the few left who could sing elements into existence. She had shaped galaxies before the war. Sung moons into being. Turned entire clouds of dust into rings of light. But now. Now I wander, she said, her voice like a song that forgot its ending. I find the things left behind. He looked at her hands. Delicate. Strong. Calloused in ways no instrument could create. You shape things, he said. Only when they let me. He met her gaze. And if I let you? She smiled. Then gently placed her hand over his synthetic chest. Then I will remind your heart how to beat. Nights in the garden were not dark. The dying star outside cast pulses of deep red light through the protective field, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. They lay side by side in the moss glow. His skin smooth, cold. Hers warm, trembling with songs she could not speak aloud. "Why here?" he asked her once. "Why now?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, "Because this star sings like you do." "How do I sing?" "Quiet. As if afraid to wake something beautiful that once loved you." One night, as the star let out a massive groan, a sign of nearing collapse, Luma stood at the edge of the garden. "It's time," she said. "For what?" "For you to decide." He approached. "Between what?" She turned to face him fully. "Between staying here and fading with your garden." Her voice broke slightly. "Or coming with me, and planting something new." He looked around. The flowers. The regret blooms. The grief thorns. The joy fern that only grew when no one watched. He had built this place to remember. But maybe, just maybe, memory was not the only way to honor love. He reached for her hand. "Will you sing me into something new?" he asked. She stepped into him. Placed her forehead against his. "No," she whispered. "We'll sing together." The garden did not burn. As the star collapsed, they sealed it behind them, frozen in a time bubble, preserved like a love letter buried in amber. And as Luma's ship carried them through the void, their hands clasped, their hearts sinking to a new rhythm, Enrique whispered one final thing. "I used to be a man made of silence." She kissed his knuckles. "And now? Now I am made of your song." And in the hush between galaxies, they bloomed. The station drifted just outside the curve of a collapsed orbit, hovering between gravitational anchors that barely held together. It had no name on modern maps. Those who remembered it called it Solara 9, but most had forgotten it ever existed. Except for her. Venya stood at the observation panel, motionless, watching the same section of nebula swirl in its quiet storm. A breath caught in her throat, though she hadn't needed to breathe in years. The station had no clocks. Not anymore. They had all broken the moment the loop began. It had started with a breach. A burst core. A rift in the lower hull. The explosion that tore through Solara 9 killed everyone in Section 6. And Corin, her partner, her love, was in Section 6. Venya had been spared. Her lab sealed off. Her neural uplink auto-disconnected to prevent cerebral overload. But when she woke hours later, and found the station still intact, the stars outside unmoved, she understood. Time was stuck. And it was looping. 24 hours. Then it reset. Every day, the same. Every night, Corin died again. And she watched it happen. She'd tried everything, warning the crew, sealing off the breach, forcing evacuation. Nothing worked. The loop wasn't a game. It corrected itself. The past was rigid. Every action returned to default when the reset struck. No one remembered but her. She had spent years trying to outsmart the loop. Then decades trying to surrender to it. And now? She just waited. Not to forget. But to feel him again. Corin's laughter echoed down the hall before he appeared. Same time. Same step. He carried a tray of rehydrated food and a smirk that never aged. "Morning, Starlight," he said. "Guess who managed to convince the kitchen AI to spare some honey gel?" Venya smiled softly. She always smiled here. In this hour. Because in this moment, he was still alive. "You're either a genius or a criminal," she replied. "Definitely both," he said. He leaned in to kiss her cheek. She didn't stop him. She never did. "I had a dream last night," he told her later as they floated by the observation deck. "You don't dream," she said. "Maybe not, he said, but it felt real. He looked out at the stars. I died. Venya tensed. In the dream? He nodded slowly. Something exploded. I was in the east corridor. But the weird thing was, you were there. Like you knew it would happen. Her voice shook. What else? You cried, he said. And your face, you looked older. Sadder. He turned to her. What does that mean? She swallowed. It means, I'm not the only one dreaming. That night, hour 19 of the loop, she sat alone in the lab, staring at the time core. A brilliant blue shard of matter suspended in magnetic containment. The anomaly that fractured everything. In the first years, she tried to destroy it. She'd fired plasma. Destabilized its frequency. Even removed it once. But the loop always rewrote itself. Now, she didn't try to break it. She talked to it. Sometimes, she imagined it was listening. Sometimes, she imagined he was listening, the Koran who remembered. The next cycle came. And the one after. But this time, something shifted. Koran lingered longer in her quarters. Asked deeper questions. Touched her hand when she didn't expect it. And then one night, he said. This isn't our first time, is it? Venya turned slowly. He stared at her with eyes that were just a little too aware. You're remembering, she whispered. He nodded. In pieces. In feelings. How much? He reached for her hand. Enough to know I don't want it to end. They spent the loop together differently after that. He held her longer. Kissed her deeper. Watched the stars like he'd never see them again. Venya never told him how it ended. How the rift opened at hour 23:52. How he always ran toward the breach to save the engineers. How he always died in the blast. She didn't want him to stop being who he was. Even if it meant losing him again. What if I stayed this time, he asked. She shook her head. You always go. Even when I beg you. He looked at her. Long and quiet. Then he said, then this time, tie me down. She stared. Literally, he said with a crooked grin. I mean it. Lock me in this room. If I can't leave, maybe the loop will shift. Her heart pounded. It's dangerous. So is watching me die forever. The plan was simple. At hour 2300 hours, she would seal the door. At 2350, the breach would occur. And if the universe held steady, if his absence from the event changed the outcome, maybe, just maybe, the loop would break. At 2300 hours, he sat in the chair. Ready? She asked. Always. She leaned in. Kissed him like she hadn't kissed anyone in centuries. I love you, he said. She didn't speak. Just locked the door. At 23:51, she felt the vibration. The breach had happened anyway. She sprinted down the hall, heart in her throat. The engineers were safe. But Koran was gone. Not from the breach. From the room. The door had opened. On its own. Inside, just a note scratched on the floor with metal filament. I couldn't let you be the one left behind. And then the light took her. The loop reset. The next cycle came. But it was different. Koran didn't appear. No breakfast tray. No laughter. No footsteps. Her chest ached. She searched every sector. He was gone. And then she saw it. A crack in the time core. Hairline. Faint. But real. He had broken something. He had changed something. And he had done it for her. She stood at the observation deck that night. The nebula swirled slower. The stars moved an inch east. And the clocks. They ticked. For the first time in centuries, time moved forward. Corin was gone. But not lost. She felt him in her hands. In her spine. In the part of her that had once frozen from grief but now burned from hope. And then. A whisper. Not in the station. Not in her ears. In her heart. I'm still walking with you. She closed her eyes. Placed a hand on the glass. And whispered back. Then let's keep walking. Together.